Okay, let's start our alterations. The first one we're going to do is we're going to do some lengthening. Okay, we'll start with the skirt. So number one is skirt front and back. Okay, so I usually just grab a front or a back, whatever happens to be here. Now on your assignments, I've asked you to lengthen one and shorten the other. So I really don't care which you do which. And I'm okay with, I don't care how much you shorten it, how much you lengthen it, all right? But what I wouldn't do is to go crazy. I would probably do like half of what I do, like, because I'm using full scale pattern, so it's easier to see what I'm doing. And you guys can use half scale. So if I do an inch, half an inch is great, all right? Now, can everybody see me? I need to make sure everyone can see me. And if you can't, we have some seats here in the front. You're welcome to gravitate forward. Just make sure you're not behind something that would obstruct your view. How's that? Okay, so let's start with, this happens to be the skirt front, all right? And what we're going to do is lengthen and shorten. So I'm going to show you how to shorten, but then I'm going to actually finish the pattern by lengthening, because you can see lengthening a lot better than you can see shortening. So when I finish, this will be a lengthen, but I'll kind of outline how to do both. And then when I finish these, I usually give them to Greta or Drew, and then they'll write down the number it is and what we've done, and they're going to put all of our alterations on those 2 bulletin boards. And they'll stay there the whole semester for us and beginning. So anyone that's doing alterations can look up there and see all these different alterations that we've done. But they might look up there and say, wow, she only likes lengthening. She doesn't like shortening. Well, I do like to shorten, but it looks better when I lengthen. Okay, so the first thing we do is, because we're lengthening, we're going to do this for the next 3 alterations. When we lengthen, we have to cut slash through the entire pattern, because the length that we added has to be on the entire pattern. All right? Now, when you do your lengthening on a skirt, if you'll notice, this is a fitted skirt, and below the hip line, this is nothing but a rectangle. Okay? If you have just a rectangle, really, I could slash anywhere here and add in my length, and it would be fine. I could even go down to the hem and add it in. But the reason I don't do that is because I want to keep my hem the way it's supposed to be. Now, if this was a flared skirt, if I were to add length on the bottom of a flared skirt, then I totally change the amount of the sweep of that skirt. But if I go up higher, then it doesn't change the hem as much. It just adds length kind of in this area. And on your patterns, they will often give you lengthen or shorten here, and they'll give you a line to do it on. And those are good lines to cut straight through. All right? So what I'm going to do is, I have my hip line here. I'm just going to cut through my hip line where it goes straight, and then I will do my alterations there. Also, you'll notice on this skirt, this is called the hip curve. And on a fitted skirt, that's pretty much the only place you do a lot of fitting, is right along this curved hip curve, because everybody's a little bit different here. And then you also do some changes often on the darts. Okay? So I'm just going to go ahead and slash through my pattern. Okay? Now, if I was going to shorten my pattern, and I'll just grab one of these pens. Okay, if I was going to shorten my pattern, then I would, let's say I want to shorten an inch, then I would make some lines here. Okay, I've got a couple of dots. And then I would take my pattern and I would just go up and line it up with those dots, and then I would line up my center front, because that's my grain line, okay? So I'm just going to write on here center front. Okay? And then so I would just check to make sure that this was straight and that I have my inch, and that would be my shortening. Okay, I've just shortened the length. But I'm going to now lengthen it, okay? And what I'm going to do is, I have my filler paper, okay? And on your filler paper, I'm going to put this under like that. Okay, I needed one more little piece, so I'll just go like this. I don't know if I like this little piece. It's okay, I just need to move this over a little bit. There we go. Okay. And I'm going to go ahead and tape that on, okay, because I know I need to add some filler. So I'll just tape that on. So this is where you have to make sure you've got it flat. The other thing is, notice how I'm able to stick everything through this cork board. You guys have a cork board on your desk, and it's for pattern alterations. So you can do all of this before you start taping so that you can get it just right, so that you're working, you can move it around. Okay, now I'm going to add an inch. So I'm just going to put a mark there. And I'm actually going to draw this down. Well, oh, my ruler's bad. Okay. All right, so that's what I need to add. And now I'm going to take the bottom of my skirt, and I'm just going to put it right up like that and put it up to that line. And I've got my, I've added in my extra length. So now I'm just going to tape this down. Okay, now let's just review a few of our rules. Number one, is our center front line straight? Yes, it is. But I have to redraw something here. What do I need to redraw? Side seam, right? And we have curved rulers that help us draw nice, smooth, curved lines. Okay? So what I would do now is I would find where I can do that line, keep it nice and smooth and curved, and just redraw that. Okay? So I am finished. I'm going to put on here number 1, and then Greta can go ahead and put the rest of that. Any questions on this one? Yes?
Do you want us to just cut out a small piece right here?
You can just cut out a small piece if you like. Let's go to the next one, and they can see a picture of it on the screen. So that's what what you will turn in. So what you'll do is you'll lengthen one and shorten the other. Okay, so you can see that right on the PowerPoint. Okay, does that help you out? Mm-hmm. When you guys turn these in, you'll want to trim your pattern right along the cutting line, because it'll look a lot nicer when you turn them in. And this is something that you'll keep in your portfolio. Okay. No, don't do it with me. No. Actually, it works better if you watch me do it, because if you try to do it with me, then you miss what I'm doing. Yeah. So what I would do is watch me do it, and I will try and get through them kind of quickly, and then you can take some notes or whatever. Yeah, I've had, when students try and do it with me, they often are so busy working on theirs, they miss what I do. Okay? Plus, if you watch me do it, and then you go and do it, then you'll have to remember what I've done. And in remembering what I've done, that's where you really do get it in your brain and think about it. Okay. All right, so for some things it does work to do it with me, and there are a couple I will have you do with me. But these first ones we won't. Okay, let's go to the next one. And the next one is the bodice. And we're going to do, I'll go ahead and do the front here. You're going to do a front and a back. And you're going to lengthen one, shorten the other. Okay? So let's look at this. Now this is a bodice that only goes to the waist. Okay, many times you'll be making shirts that go past the waist. Or maybe you'll make a dress. But if you have something that goes right to the waist, then I'm going to show you how to do the alteration. And if you have something that goes down further, a lot of times your pattern will have a line here that says lengthen or shorten here. And that works. But for this one, we're going to do this. Now, this is where I introduce the seam method. Okay, so we are going to use the seam method in our alterations. And the seam method is a method that was established by a couple of my professors when I was your age. And they wrote a book, and this is what we use in all of our alterations that we do in our program. And the book is a book that actually the advanced students purchase. But it's also, as I've been around to different sewing conferences, many people use this method. So it's not just us. It's a method that works really great, and it makes it very clean and very simple. And it's a lot better than they actually came out with this after I graduated. So I learned other methods that are a lot more complicated. So this one is a great one. So what this method is, it's called the seam method. And what we do here is we cut the seam off. Then we either put it back on the pattern and take up the extra, like decrease or increase by where we then put our seam back. So it works out really great. So what we're going to do is we're going to slash. And I'm going to take this down for a sec while I show you where to slash. Okay? So because we're going to alter, on this one we're going to add length. I am going to cut the seam off, add my length or decrease my length, and then put the seam back on. Okay? So you are going to slash, go up about 1 inch or 2, and you cut right into the seam. Okay? And then try to maneuver this. Then you're going to cut along the seam line. Now when you do this method, you do have to draw in the seam lines. So you'll notice on your patterns that you purchase, they only give you a cutting line. They don't give you a stitching line. The old patterns used to give us a stitching line. That's back when you bought 1 size per pattern. But now that we buy 5 sizes, 3 to 6 sizes, sometimes more, they can only give you cutting lines. So you have to take the cutting line you're going to use and go in 5/8 of an inch and find where the seam line is. Okay? Okay, so let's put this back up here. Okay? So I've taken off the seam, and I've taken it off all along the bottom and up the side a little bit. So here's my seam. All right? So the next thing I'm going to do is when I take this seam, if I want to shorten it, then I'll lay it on top. If I want to lengthen it, then I'll bring it down. But in doing the seam method, you have to do what's called add hinges. Okay, I think a lot of you are familiar with that. I'm just going to cut a little bit of this off. So when I hinge, I've got to put a hinge right here at that seam. Okay? So when you do a hinge, you always cut from the outside and keep it intact by this little tiny hinge at the seam. Okay, so we want to keep the seam the same, but the seam allowance is only there to support the seam. So if that ends up being changed a little bit, we're okay with that. All right, so I'm just going to cut into this. We always hinge diagonally at a corner. Okay, so now I've got this hinge, which means I can now manipulate this when I put it back on the pattern. All right? What would happen if I cut through that hinge, if I have a bad hinge day? If I cut straight through, what should I do? Tape it, and recut. The beauty of paper. Okay, now I'm going to take 1 inch off. I'm going to make this 1 inch shorter. All right, so I'm going to mark it here at 1 inch. Okay, so if I'm going to decrease here, see, I've got it marked. I just simply take this. Now remember, our center front line stays the same, and then I come over here. But if I don't hinge, well, it actually looks better. No. But with this hinge, I can then move this. Can you guys see how I can move that to make that line up? Okay, so that would be decreasing, but I am going to increase. Okay, so let me cut a little bit of, well, I just tear. I'm going to add this here. Okay. And I am going to, I can go ahead and tape this because this is my filler paper. Okay, and now I'm going to mark. I'm going to add 1 inch. So, and I'm actually going to draw this line straight down so that I can make sure that I get the right amount, okay? Or that I keep that straight. Okay, so there's 1 inch, and here is 1 inch, okay? So the next thing I do is I take my seam and I put it back on, and I line up my center front to that inch mark, and then I'm going to bring this over to that inch mark. Okay, now I'm going to take this and I'm going to line that up so it matches. Okay, so now that I've got that, I can hinge that. Could you see how it kind of had to open this up, and then but it lined up nice and even. All right, yes.
So when you shorten it,
Yep.
and so you have to remove the hinge. So like, if
Uh-huh.
you get it to connect, but then where it connects a little bit above it is off, do you just cut off the little part?
Yeah, you just redraw it. Yeah. And what you're trying to connect is your seam, the seam line. So you reconnect that seam. You want that to match up, and then you redraw, okay? So I'll redraw and show you what this is going to look like, okay? All right, so there's my alteration. Now I need to redraw. Can you see where I need to redraw? My darts. On my darts, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go from here up to the tip, all right? So rather than try and make those lines match up, I just pretty much redraw that dart. Can you see how I've done that? So I just take the tip at the top, go down here, and redraw. Okay? Did everyone see how I redrew that dart? And then if it's, like if you're having a problem knowing which line it is, then you just slash out the old one. Okay, so I'm just going to slash that out. Okay? And then I'm going to come over here, and I'm going to kind of do the same thing. Because this is a straight line, I'm going to go up here at the top, and I'm going to go down, and I'm going to redraw that. Okay? And then I can also redraw my cutting line. Okay? See how now it's nice and straight. And the seam was over here, but if I do this and keep that straight, then I take off some of my waist amount. So by adding that length, it does add in just a little bit extra circumference there, which is okay. Yep.
So on patterns,
Yep.
the dart doesn't go past the seam allowance. So like, do we need a mark on the like where the dart is?
Okay, say that again. I'm not
Okay,
sure.
So if you notice, the dart doesn't go past the seam allowance. Like it does on
The dart doesn't go past the seam allowance.
right, like you can see where your dart is even past the seam allowance.
Right up here?
Right. Oh, mine like, that's about, this isn't.
So,
So she's saying that the dart isn't drawn all the way to the edge.
oh, it doesn't matter. Yeah, so like this isn't drawn here.
Right.
You could just draw that in. Yeah. Yeah.
So I didn't see the hinge. Did you use it in this one? Like,
Yeah, see how it opened that up?
okay.
Yeah. Yeah, so that opened that hinge up. Okay, good. Any other questions on that? Okay, so if you have a test and it tells you to lengthen or shorten a bodice, use the seam method, okay? When you have an actual pattern, sometimes the seam method will make more sense. Sometimes on a length alteration, you may just use the lengthen and shorten line on a pattern. Just depends on what your piece looks like. Okay, so we're finished with that one. Okay, let's go to number 3. Okay. Okay, number 3 is a sleeve, all right? And on this one, you can see up with the picture up on the PowerPoint that I've asked you to lengthen above the elbow and shorten below. Okay, so we're just going to do both alterations on one pattern piece. Now, do you think that could happen to somebody? Do you think you could have to, I have to remember here. Do you think you would ever have to lengthen up here and shorten down here? We saw that when we measured ourselves. We measured our sleeve, and then we measured from the top of the sleeve to the elbow. And we could see that sometimes this measurement changes. Because I have a dart here, that makes this pattern a fitted sleeve. And when you have a fitted sleeve and you have a dart, that dart will point right at the elbow. So if it's pointing below your elbow or above your elbow, it's going to fit kind of funny, and you won't like it. Okay, now what if you have a pattern and it doesn't give you any lengthen or shorten lines? Or maybe it gives you one. Then you have to put in your own lengthen or shorten lines. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to take my grain arrow and I'm going to draw it further down the page. Okay? Because on this pattern, my grain is kind of my anchor, my guide. So I've got to keep this grain line straight. And then if I have to redraw or make adjustments, it will be on the two seams. Okay? So in order to draw in your own lengthen and shorten line, you just do a line that's perpendicular to the grain. So if you take your little clear ruler, that's easy to do. You just line that up and then do a perpendicular line. Okay? No, not really. Just do it somewhere like in this area and then somewhere in this area. Okay? All right, once we get that done, then let's go ahead and slash, because this is a length alteration, so we slash through the whole pattern. Okay? So we're going to lengthen above and we're going to shorten below. So let's do the first one. Okay? So lengthen, that means I am going to add some filler paper. Okay? I've got the brightest filler paper that you'll ever see. So there won't be any doubt as to what is going on. Okay? So I'll just go ahead and put this in here. I need it to be a little bit longer. Okay, so there's that. So I'm going to add 1 inch. Okay, you guys don't have to do that much. So I'm just going to come down here and measure 1 inch. And I'll just put one here as well. Okay, so now I have my 3 lines to kind of guide me. And now I'm going to bring this up, okay, to here. But I'm going to do one other thing, because I want to keep that grain line straight. I'm just going to go ahead and draw that down through my filler paper so I can line it up. Now I'm using felt tip pens. They're wonderful little clickable felt tip pens, but they're very fat at the point. So it's almost like I'm adding 1/8 of an inch sometimes. But I do that so you can see what I'm doing. But when you do your alterations, you are just going to use a pencil. Okay, and with a pencil, they'll be nice and sharp. Okay, so there's, all right, there we go. So I've got the grain line lined up, and I lined up my 1 inch marks. Okay, so that one is done. Well, not quite, but I'm going to go ahead and tape that down because it's right where I want it to be. Don't tape things down until it's exactly where you want it to be, all right? Okay, now I've lengthened here. I'm going to shorten down here. Okay. All right, so in shortening here, I didn't draw this, I didn't cut it perfectly straight. So you guys can cut it straighter. Okay, but I'm going to now take that up 1 inch. Okay, so I've marked 1 inch here, and now I'm going to bring this up to match. Okay, and on here I'm going to match my grain line. So that means it's going to be off on the sides. Can you see how off that is right there? This one is not too bad, but this is perfectly straight. So that's my anchor right there. I want to make sure I get that nice and straight. So I'm going to go ahead and tape this down. Okay, and then I will come back and I will correct and finish off my seams. Okay, so the first thing that I need to redraw is my side seam here. Okay, and what you do when you redraw is you go up a little ways, down a little ways, and then go ahead and draw that in to keep it smooth, because that's how our bodies are, right? They gradually change. This one is just barely off, but I'm still going to redraw it. Okay, so that side is finished. Now this side, it's a little bit more of a problem, but this one isn't too bad. So on here, I'm going to redraw the seam lines. Sometimes we redraw the seam lines first and then go 5/8 beyond that to the cutting line. But this one isn't too bad. Okay, now I come down here to this one. There is a 1/4 inch difference. So what should I do? Normally what you do is find your middle ground, kind of go to the middle of that gap, and then redraw from the top to the middle and then from the bottom to the middle. Now the reason why this corner looks so funny is because our pattern has had a few too many tracings. So just ignore that and pretend that's a nice right angle. Okay, so what I'm going to do, the other thing is, this is kind of a curved seam right here, okay, because this is a fitted sleeve. So I probably will use my curved ruler. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go up here to where the seam, to where the seam starts at the end of that dart. And then I'm going to go down here. So again, I'm going above and below until I get a nice curved line. Sometimes what I'll do is I'll find the exact curve, like here's the exact curve in that space on my ruler, and then I take it and I just go out a little ways. So I'm basically following that same curve. Okay? So that's how I blended that. Did that make sense to everybody? Yeah.
Can you tell me again where you put the second dot? Was it on the outer or the inner adjusted line?
This dot here,
Yeah.
I found where the gap was, and I put a dot kind of in the middle.
In between the two.
Yeah,
Okay.
but because this ends up, I'm going to have to blend this. It ends up being that the dot is a little bit closer to the outside line here at the top than the inside line, because I don't have as much space here to blend as I do down here. And then I just find the curve, a nice curve on this ruler that will match up from the top, like where I start at the cutting line, down to my new blended dot. And then I also follow that as I go down, so then I find another curve where I can blend it in. So you can see that I blended this line in. By the time I get up to a little bit before the top, it's blended in. And I go down about 3 or 4 inches before I can blend it in near the hem. Okay, but that looks good, doesn't that? Looks like it's perfect, like it was always supposed to be like that. And then I'm going to slash out the old line so I don't get confused. Okay, and I'm going to tape it some more because I love tape. It just makes everything better. All right, okay, so there is number 3. There's your sleeve. Okay, any questions on that one?
You want us to do these on separate pieces?
No, you can do this on one. And when I put it in my book, this is what I wanted to focus on. So I actually just folded this down and put it in. Okay, because it doesn't fit. All right, there we go. Okay, now we're going to go to the next area, the next section here, which is moving darts up and down. This is going to be bust darts. Okay, so when you have a pattern and you have a dart right here, this dart should point to the bulge, right? I worry that you can't see me. Are you? Okay, good. So this dart should point to the crown of the bulge. Have I mentioned that before? Okay, good. I might say it a few more times, but okay. So the bulge right here is the bust point. So have you ever had something you've worn, and you don't have to raise your hand if you don't want to, where your bust point may be higher than where the dart's pointing, or lower than where the dart's pointing? I have a really hard time when I talk to people and that dart is way off. I can't hardly look because it drives me insane. So what happens often with women as time goes by is that this little bust point sort of starts to get a little bit lower and lower. Although you sent Kirsten sent me a wonderful article on bra fitting. I know this is on camera, but so what? And it was a great article, and I think I'm going to send it out to everybody. Is that okay? And it was really great on bra fitting. So if you're properly fitted, that diminishes that little downward motion. All right? Okay, so what we want to do is make sure this dart is pointing where it goes. And this is such a common alteration. In our advanced class, 9 out of 10 women, we have to adjust that dart, or at least half. Let's say half. Okay, so I'm gonna show you a couple ways to do that. So I'll get 2 of these front pieces from Greta, and I'm gonna show you an easy way if it's a small adjustment, and I'm gonna show you an easy way, but takes a little bit more effort, if it's a bigger adjustment. All right? So I think I'll just go ahead and I'll do the first one here. Oh, and I just love to throw pins around. All right. Okay, so the first thing you're going to do is if it's an adjustment that's less than a half an inch, okay, half an inch is debatable, but that's kind of our cutoff point. So let's say that this dart needs to go up. So it says right here, bust darts up. So the first one is you're going to redraw the dart going, let's say it needs to, the bust point is a little bit higher. So that means I'm going to take this dart and point it up a little bit. To do that, all I have to do is, and I'll do like 3/8 because that's sort of a cutoff. So I've got a new tip. So I just measured the tip going straight up, 3/8. You guys can do a quarter or 3/8. And then,
3/8, we do something as in half and down.
say that again?
We do 3/8, we're gonna do half and 3/8.
No, this is 3/8 from here to 3/8. Here is 3/8. If I have to do more, if I have to do a half an inch, then I'm not going to do this. I'm going to go to a different alteration.
How do we do that with the smaller something? 3/8?
Yes, 3/8 is good. Yeah. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is just redraw this back into this leg and redraw it back into this leg. And I'm finished. Isn't this a great alteration? But what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of mark out this old one, okay? So, well, actually I'm not quite finished, but I'm finished with that one. But see how simple that was? Now this works up to a half an inch because if I do more of that, then it's going to change that dart significantly. And it works kind of going up. What if I would have gone down? The last thing a woman wants are bust darts that point down, because what does that make your eye do? Oh wow, she is hanging low. I mean, so get that? So that means that it looks like gravity's really taking its toll. Now, because I moved that up a little bit, I also need to move this one up. So I'm going to go up about 3/8 there. Okay, and I'm going to move this dart as well. There. Okay, so I moved this dart up a little bit, which means I also need to move this dart. Now my darts are straight darts. Your guys's are round. All right, so you're going to need to, or curved, let's say, they're curved. So you'll have to draw a little bit more of a curved line. Okay, that is darts, bust darts up. So that's number 4. Okay, let's go to the next one. All right, I'm just going to leave that there for a minute, Greta, so you can kind of compare. Okay, now here's this one. Okay, on this one, I'm going to move these darts down, okay? And I'm going to move them down an inch because if you have a larger bust, then chances are you will need to move this down. Or it just depends on how they act. Okay, so what we're going to do here is I'm going to draw a box around the darts. I'm going to draw a box right here, and then I'm just going to move that whole box down. So it's like I don't even have to redraw these darts at all. I just take a little box and go down. So in doing that, I've got to make sure that the darts are in the box. So what I do is I line up my ruler so that I can draw a perpendicular line, okay? Now, if I include in my box the tip of this dart, then it will automatically be adjusted with this one. But if I don't, then I have to redraw that one later. So I just go ahead and draw around it. And to do my box, I've got to go perpendicular to my center front. Okay, and then I want to end close to that. Now this one then is parallel. So I've got to find my line here and draw parallel, okay? So you can see this one I went over a little bit, but this one I just needed that. So this is perpendicular to center front, perpendicular to center front, parallel to center front. Okay, now the next thing I'm going to do is cut this box out. So let me take this down because I can't cut straight lines on the board very well. It's, I just want to make sure that I get the darts in the box. So there's not like this 1 inch down, 1 inch, just draw it to where you want to stay away from the underarm corner. Okay. Okay, so now I'm going to put this back up. So you want to stay a little bit below that underarm corner. Okay. All right, that looks great. And now I'm going to put in a little bit of filler paper, okay? Because I'm bringing the darts down, I need to put some filler paper right here. Okay, so I'm just going to tape in some filler paper. Then I'm going to measure 1 inch down. 1 inch is quite a bit, but that's not uncommon. Okay, so I've marked off 1 inch. And now I'm going to take this, because I've drawn these nice parallel and perpendicular lines, when I put this back on here, I just match up those lines. Okay, match that up. I did. I moved it 1 inch. Okay, there. And I'm going to, tape this. I have a really long piece of tape now. And here, okay? So now I've got this all back on. Okay, so now what I need to do is redraw some lines, okay? So this one is not hard at all, but what I'm going to do is go from this corner. So I can just go from here. Well, let me go up. Let's do the cutting line here. I'm just going to go from corner to corner to straighten that out. Oh, this ruler's got a little problem. There. Okay, so I did that one. Now this one down here, instead of taking the middle, this is actually a straight line. So I can just go from the top here to the bottom and just redraw that line. Okay. There. Because that's a straight line, I just redrew it. Now what am I going to do here? Look at that, was probably the biggest. Here's my dart tip. Here's where my seam is. And now I'm going to redraw this. Because this is a straight dart, I can just redraw from the tip to the base. Okay, and that will give me my new dart. Okay, any questions on that one? Yes?
Would it ever make sense to move the dart and then do the similar alterations as number 4? where you move the tip of the dart up?
Yes. If you need to move this up more than a half an inch or more, I could take this same box and go up. Okay? Now there's another thing that I could do as well. If you look at your sleeve pattern, let's say I've got the right length, but the darts are in the wrong place. Remember how we shortened it, we lengthened it here and shortened it here? Could I also draw a box around these darts and move those? Yes, you can do that, and it makes it very simple. So drawing little boxes and moving them is a very simple way to change darts, and sometimes you can even do it on underarm. Well, we're going to do it on the arm, underarm as well right now. But I wanted to point out that you can do that on a sleeve as well. Okay, so that was number 5. Okay, so let me just write down 5 here. Okay, so I'll have Greta finish with these, and we'll go on to the next 2 ones. Okay. All right, so the next thing we're going to do is an arm joint length adjustment. Okay. So before I do this, Greta, do you mind if I measure you with a couple of L squares?
Totally fine.
Okay, so let me just grab a couple rulers here. Okay, if you'll just come over here, Greta. Okay, so the next alteration is called arm joint length. Okay, so Greta here, we have a measurement from the top of her shoulder to underneath her arm. Now, if I could take her arm off and measure that, it would be really simple. But I don't want to do that. I don't like blood or anything like that. Besides, I don't think it'd feel very good. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take an L square, and I'm going to put that right up underneath her arm. Okay? And then I'm going to take another one, and I'm going to put this on the top. I have a nice little window here now where her arm joint is. Then I'm going to measure that window. Okay, so if I have a tape measure, that'd be easy to do.
Your tape measure's right there.
Ah, I knew I brought it over here for a reason. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to measure what that little window is. And, and it's about 5.5 inches, okay? So she's pretty small. I mean, that's kind of a small little amount. All right, so what I did is I measured this right here. Now, we want our clothes to sit about 1 inch down from there, right? So if I took that 5 1/4 and added 1 inch, I'd be at 6 1/4. So that's how big this opening, that's the length of this opening that I want. So that's the arm joint depth. Now what happens if I go to do her shirt and I find it's like 3 inches or like that 6 1/2? What if it's 7 1/2 or 8 1/2 and it's going to hang way down here? Because this shirt seems to fit you pretty good. Does it fit about 1 inch below your armpit?
Yes.
Yes, okay. So that's good. But have you ever had things on where it's just really low and just way too long? Now, on a jacket that you're going to put over things, a couple inches is not bad. But have you ever had a prom dress or a wedding dress that hangs low down here? Then you go to do the dance and it's like, oh, sorry, partner, I can't move my arm above here because it's so low. If they would have taken this and moved it up, you'd be up like this, dancing and having a great time, all right? So that is one of the biggest problems that we find in formal wear, is that it's so low here that you can't move your arm up. And if you have a little cap sleeve, that makes it a little easier to adjust, but even on a little cap sleeve, you need this up closer underneath the arm. All right? Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
So what we're going to do is we're going to learn how to adjust this, okay? So what I want you to do is, this says sleeve, alter to match bodice in number 7. Does that what yours says right there? And it should say number 6, right?
Mm-hmm.
So just cross that out and put it's supposed to match number 6. So what we're going to do is we're going to take our bodice and we're going to alter this, okay? Whatever we do on here, I then have to change the sleeve, right? Because the sleeve gets sewn into that space. So if I make it an inch longer or an inch shorter, then I have to adjust my sleeve, all right? And I'm okay with you doing the front or the back, and I'm okay with you making it shorter or longer, either one. I'll make mine longer because once again you can see it much better with this bright filler paper than if I make it shorter. So I'm gonna, let's say that Greta is gonna make something and we need to add an inch to that length. It's just too snug, too tight. Or maybe we're gonna make something that, like a shirt where she wants to be able to wear it over things. So she needs it a little bit longer. So let's take this, okay, and the first thing we're gonna do is draw a box. Okay, so we're gonna do this one with a box. Okay, so let me find this. Okay, so when I do this box, because I want to add some length, you can go ahead and go to the picture and they can see that a little easier. So my box has got to be this area here, okay? And I can like make it lengthen it or shorten it. So I'll kind of show you a little bit of both. So the first thing I do when I do this box is, again, it's going to be perpendicular and parallel to center front. And I want to come down below this arm, but I want to be above the dart. So I'm going to go somewhere right in here, okay? And I'm just going to draw this line here, okay? And I want to kind of do it up here so I have enough room to move. Then I'm going to come up here, and I'm going to draw a line here. And I want it to be kind of similar. Now, because these are perpendicular to center front, I can line up my ruler here, okay, and I'm going to line it up to this top one with the idea that I've got to add a little bit here, okay, there. Okay, so there's my box, and it's around the arm joint, the underarm, okay. Now I'm going to cut that box out. So let me go ahead and cut this little box. Okay, and I'm going to cut it nice and straight. And I'm going to get rid of some of this extra paper. Sometimes when you do these alterations, sometimes it's a little bit harder on the smaller scale. That's why I make sure that you don't do quite as much as I do, because with the small scale, it's like magnified. Okay, so here is the bodice with that square cut out, okay? And you're going to look at that thinking, she's gone crazy. What is she going to do? Well, don't worry, we'll fix this. So what I can do now is, if I want to add length, I bring it down. If I want to make it shorter, I'm going to bring it up. You know what? I think I will make mine shorter because most of you will be doing that alteration, all right? Most of you will be making your arm joint shorter because most of the time they're too long, okay? So let's see. Oh, I might have. Okay, there we go. So I'm actually going to make it shorter. I also have a dart here. Now, if by making it shorter, I'll go up like this. If I would have made it longer, that would have been a little bit tricky with that dart leg. So if I was going to do that, I'd have to see if that dart can come down as well, or if I just have to kind of make them a little bit closer together. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to do, and 1 inch, it might seem like quite a bit, but often that's what you need. Okay, so I'm just going to put an inch here. So I've just marked an inch. And now remember, you guys can, pin these before you actually tape them. Okay, now I've lined up this line here. Good. And I've got my 1 inch. So with that in mind, I'm going to go ahead and tape mine down. Okay. Let me get a little bit more tape here. There. Okay, so that's good. I have just made this depth shorter. So when you're trying to measure a pattern, if I were to go from here down to here, that would be my depth. Sometimes on a pattern we can go straight down and measure the depth. So like if that's the depth, I can go straight down. Or what I can do is I can measure this curve, and you can actually walk your tape measure along there and get a measurement, and you can also measure this curve, you know, the curve of your arm. But to do the same measurement I did on here, I would just take this at the seam, go straight down until it was level with that. Okay? All right, so now I've got that done. Let's go ahead and fix this, redraw. So I'm just going to go find the corner on both of these and redraw that. Okay? And then I'm going to look up here and say, okay, I need to kind of go in the middle there. So, well, I could freehand it, but who knows what that might look like. So I think I will do this. So I'm going to bring that kind of, start to curve it to kind of find that middle ground. And then see how curved that is right there? So I'm just going to go kind of down in like that. Okay, so I'm going to take out that part there and kind of slash out that part. So now you can see the line. Okay, there we go. Isn't that slick? Now, we need to do a sleeve to match this. What have I done to this arm side? I've made it smaller. Okay, now on the PowerPoint, you can see where I've lengthened one and shortened one. Okay, so you can see both. Okay, let's go to the sleeve now. Okay, so this one shows where I've lengthened. So keep in mind, this is bodice front. I've changed bodice front. Do I need to change bodice back? Yes, I do. They need to match. So once I change the bodice back and the bodice front, I've made this an inch shorter on this side, which is the front, and I would make it an inch shorter on the other side. So this arm side needs to be 1 inch shorter, okay, all the way around. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw a line through my sleeve cap. Now remember, my grain line is my anchor, okay? So I'm going to take my ruler and I'm going to do a perpendicular line from the grain through the sleeve cap. Okay? And then, this is kind of high because I'm working way up here. So I'm going to lower this a little bit so I can actually deal with this. All right? So now I'm going to cut right along this line. Okay, and I've got to add. Okay, so let me grab this. Okay, so I need to add, so I'm going to put in some filler paper. Okay. Well, yes, you're right, I shortened it. Okay, oh, well I got to, okay, then I'll shorten this one. Okay, so I don't need filler paper, do I? Okay, so thank you very much. I'm so used to adding that I forget. Okay, so now I'm going to just put some dots here so that I know where to go. Okay? And then I'm going to bring this up. I'm going to make sure my grain line's the same. And then I'm going to add, have it match up to those 1 inch marks. Okay? And then I'll tape it and redraw. So yeah, if you guys shorten or lengthen, then just do this accordingly. Okay? Now this looks a little crazy, doesn't it? Look at the difference here. This one is like a 1/2 inch here. I'm going to put a mark in the middle. See, like that? So that's, well, it's not, this is kind of fat, so it doesn't look in the middle. But now I have to redraw that down to here, and then I've got to redraw that up to here. Okay? So I'm going to take my Variform ruler, curved ruler, and to make nice smooth lines. Now if you have a French curve works great. We use this one just because it's a little bit more versatile. And see, now if I kind of find that same curve and just kind of go out, then that should work. And then I've got to flip it to do the other side to find a nice underarm. And see, look at how that was the original curve. Now I'm just going to slide it over a little bit and redraw that. Okay? So there's my curve. And I just put some little slash lines there and take that out. See? Does that look good? Okay, now we got to do the other side. So we'll do the same thing. We'll find this curve here. Okay. And then just kind of slide that out. Whoops. And then flip it to do the other curve. The sleeve is a inside-outside curve. Okay, and then that, it looks a little, I need to kind of smooth that out. And then just take those little marks out there. Okay, we're finished. Yes? Say that again.
How do you make sure like the sleeve part matches the arm part?
Okay, so this is my front from here to here.
Yeah.
And on this here, this is my front and this is the back. So now from this dot, and also you want to have a dot right there. So from the front going down like this, it should match because I've taken out that inch. I've taken out the inch here in the front. And since this pattern was made to match that, if I do the same thing here that I've done here, it should match up. And then I would, what I've done here on the bodice front, I would do on bodice back. And then that would be an inch shorter, so that would match up too. All right? Yes?
Do you want us to do the bodice front and back on this?
No, you only have to do one,
Okay.
and then just match the sleeve. So and you can make it shorter or longer. And I've done all of those on the PowerPoint, so you can follow whichever one makes sense, or whichever one you want to do. Okay, so there's that. And that was number 6 and 7. So, all right. Okay, let's go to the next one. Okay. And now we're going to do some width adjustments. So let's do the waist on the fitted skirt, and then we'll do the hip. The hip. All right. Okay, so on the waist. Now this is where we're going to use our seam method. Okay, and so you are going to use a front and a back, and you're going to make one increase and one decrease. I'm going to do the increase. I'll cut it for the, you cut it the same for both, and then I'll just kind of show you both and then finish up with the increase. First thing you do is go over about an inch from the seam and cut down through the seam allowance to the seam, and then go over to the corner, and then go down, and you want to go all the way down to the hip, okay? And we're going to hinge at the hip so that I can manipulate the pattern, and I'm going to hinge at the corner. We always hinge at corners. And I'm going to just put a little H here where I've hinged so you can see that. Okay? All right. So here's what I've done. Okay? So now let me show you increase and decrease here. Okay? Okay, so if I was going to, let's say I was going to take it in an inch. Now if I take it in an inch here, and this is the front, I would do the same on the back, right? So if I take this in an inch, how much total am I taking it in at the waist? 4 inches, right. Okay, so let's say I do that. Then I would go right along here at the waist and put a mark, okay? And then I would bring this up, and I would move this seam in an inch, and then I would take my hinge here, and I can go straight up to match. Okay, so there, I've just taken it in an inch at the waist. Look how easy that was. Now, let me tell you the nice thing about this is my hip curve did not change at all. and it did a perfect blending because I went from 1 inch here to 0 here. So it did the blending that I needed, all right? So now let's increase. Okay, so I'm gonna take this off, okay, and I'm going to put this in here, okay, and I'm just gonna go ahead and tape that on, and then I'm going to measure out 1 inch because I want to add 1 inch from the waist, so I've got to put a mark here. Now if you use tape with the matte finish, like that plaid, green plaid scotch, then you can write on top of it and it works out great. Okay, so now I'm going to move this until I get to that 1 inch mark, and then I'm going to take this hinge until I match that up to the seam. Okay, and I just need to make sure this is nice and smooth and flat. Okay, we want to make flat patterns. Okay, there we go. All right, so that one worked out great. So now I'm just going to tape this on, and that one is finished. Now, do I have to redraw anything? I just need to redraw across there. All right. I can use, if it's really curved, I can use the very form, but that worked good. Okay, so that one was number 8. So I'll just put, when it, okay, say that again. Oh, it's kind of like this. What I would probably do is take a pencil that I just had, and what did I do with it? Oh, here it is, here it is. I would probably try to kind of smooth that out a little bit, but not much more than that. Because that just means, what this means is that my waist and my hip are closer in measurements, like in length, in circumference. So, and then I'm going to show you how to fix the high hip too if you need to. All right, oh, we need one more piece of tape on here. Look at that. There you go. Okay, now let's go to the next one, which is the skirt at the hip, okay? So this one was the waist. Now remember the rule about don't only alter the area in question. So I only altered the waist. I didn't change the hip, did I? So that's good. So now I'm going to do the back. I've been doing more front. Let's do the back. And we're going to let out the hip. Okay, now this one, there's a big rule that you need to remember on this. Whatever I do to the hip, I've got to do all the way down through the hem. Because if I don't, okay, let's say I take my hip in. If I take this in and then go back out again at the hem, that's going to look really funny. What if I bring this out and then go back in? That's going to look really funny, all right? So whatever you do at the hip, we do at all the way down the pattern, okay? So that means that when I cut off my seam allowance to do the seam method here, I'm going to start at the hem and cut out this seam all the way to the waist and hinge at the waist, okay? Because I leave the waist the same. Okay, so I'll just put an H there. Now what if I needed to add waist, hip? What if I needed to do both? Then I'd take off the whole seam allowance and move it out and put it back. Okay, but by doing that, you keep that nice shape of the cut edge that you want. Okay, so let me go ahead and cut the seam off here through the whole pattern. Okay, and I'm going to go all the way up to the waist, and I'm going to hinge at the waist, right? Because as you can see, I can't do anything with this unless I have a hinge here to move it. Okay, so the hinges allow us to manipulate the pattern. Okay, now I'm also, well, let me just show you something. I'll show you up here. Okay, so I've got the seam allowance trimmed off, okay? And I'm going to add some I might actually cut this so it looks a little bit better. And I have to, I'm gonna cut this in strips because I'm gonna need quite a bit here. Okay, so let's say I can still use this. Okay, so I'm gonna put this up here, filler. Actually, I'm gonna use my nice paper that I just cut because I have enough. Okay, so right here, okay, so I've got it here and I've got that here. Now, I go from 0. Let's say I need to add a 1/2 inch at the hip. How much total am I adding to this pattern? 2 inches. Okay, so let's do that. So if I go out here to a 1/2 inch, okay, there we are. All right, let's say I add an inch. Let's say there's a big difference between the waist and the hip, so I add an inch. Okay, now what's happened to this skirt? Is it still a straight fitted skirt? I have changed the whole design on this, which I did not want to do. So I've got to do one more thing. I am going to hinge this at the hip, okay? Because I need to change the hip, but I don't want to change the whole thing, the hem. So I'm just going to write here hinge so you can see that. So what I do now is, okay, first, and then I'm going to measure an inch. So I'm doing an inch so you can really see. So now I'm here, and I'm going to put that inch mark. Okay, let me get some. And I'm going to move this out. So 0, move it out to an inch. Okay, and I'm finished with this part. Okay, doesn't that look beautiful? My hip curve stayed the same, and it just looks great. So, but what I'm going to do now is instead of continuing on my inch, I'm now going to make sure that what I do here goes all the way down. So if I keep this at an inch, how does that look? Have I still got my straight skirt? Yep, that's what you do. So just remember that whatever I do at the hip, I've got to do it all the way the same amount to the hem. Okay. All right, so now I'm just going to quickly finish this up. Okay. All right. So let me measure an inch down here at the hem. Okay. So I keep that the same. Okay, and I'm just going to do it right here too, just to make sure I'm right where I want to be. Okay, and then I'll just go ahead and put some tape down. So now I just take this piece, and see how I can maneuver that because of that hinge? So now I just take this down to an inch here and an inch there, and tape that down, keep it nice and flat, and I'm done. Now the next thing is I want to, because this did come out a ways, it does make that a little bit off, but I want to keep it the same as the original, so I'm just going to go up like that. Okay? There. All right, any questions on that one? Okay. Okay, so there's, what number was that one? That was number 9, right? We're just doing great. We're on number 10. Okay, number 10 is let out bodice pieces to match number 8. Let one out, take one in. All right, so I need a bodice. I'll do the back. Let me look at this one. Okay. What I'm going to have you do on this one is I'm going to have you do what I've done up here. Okay? So on, well, let's have you do the bodice front. Let's have you take that out. And then on the bodice back, let's have you take it in. All right. Just what I want to show you here is this is the back. when I do the back, let me see something here. Okay, let's show the pictures. Wait, okay, I've got lots of pictures here. All right, this is what I want to show you. On the front, because I'm letting out the waist, so it says to match number 8. On 8, I change the waist on the skirt. The skirt gets sewn to the bodice. So I've got to change the bodice, right? So what did I do? I think I added an inch or something. What did I do to number 8?
You added half an inch to the 8?
Yeah, to the waist.
Inch, yes.
An inch. Okay, so I got to add an inch here. Now when I do this one, I'm only going to go up to the bottom of the dart rather than go through the dart and pull it out, because then I have to change that. So on this one, I'm just going to take off the seam, go in about an inch, inch and a half. I think I did more like an inch and a half. And then I'm just going to go up, slash through my seam allowance, and I'm going to hinge. Okay, remember, I hinge where I stop, and we always hinge at a corner. Okay? So now I'm going to hinge here, and I'm going to hinge here. All right? So there's that one. Okay. And I'm going to add this. Okay, right here. And whoops, this needs to come over. And I'm going to take this out an inch. So I'm going to tape this down. Okay, and then I'm going to measure because I need to add an inch. So I'm going to measure here at the waist and mark that inch. And then I can go ahead and put this right here at that, right here. Keep that nice and smooth. And then I'm going to take my little seam allowance here that I hinged, and I can bring that up to match. Okay? All right. It did make that seam allowance a little bit bigger, but the seam allowance is there to support the seam. So we're okay with that. Maybe I will cut this off and tape it here so you guys can see. You want to keep your, there, that looks better, doesn't it? Okay, and then I just need to redraw, and I need to redraw across here, and then I just need to redraw this. Okay, and you got, oh, see, I smeared it. You guys can make a nice smooth line. Okay, so that one is number 8. But what I want to show you on that one is, now I'm going to do both. On this one I went over the corner and up and stopped. But on this one, because I'm just going to go, well, actually, it will look better if I do that. Okay, so I'm going to go over and up. There. Huh. Okay, so on this one, and we got to hinge it. Remember, we hinge it where we stop, and we hinge it in the corner. Okay, so here's the back. All right. But what I did on, yeah, oh, that one, the reason you can't see that is because I made the one, I shortened it. Okay, so there's that, and I'll just come out. Huh, I better hinge, or I can't do anything. There. Okay, so on this one, I'll just come out an inch and do the exact same thing. But this one I went all the way up to the underarm. This one I just went up to the dart. Okay? All right. So we'll finish that one later. Okay, so now we're on number 11. Wow. Last one. Hallelujah. You're thinking, when am I ever going to do this? Well, I'll give you a little time. Okay, so this one is alter the bust circumference. let one out, take one in. Okay, so now bust circumference involves front and back, right? Because it goes all the way around. So let me just find that here. Okay. All right. Okay, so on this one, so I need to make this wider, right? Or narrower. Okay, so I'll have you, what I'd like you to do on this one is on, on number 11, alter bust circumference. So I'd like you to take the front and make it bigger, and then take the back and make it smaller. Okay? So what we do here is, because we're pulling this out, we're actually going to cut into the seam allowance right below the notch. Okay? So we cut into the seam allowance below the notch, and then we go over to the seam, and then we go down, and then I'm going to go down, just go across that dart, take the dart area, and go straight down to the waist and stop, right? Okay, now that we've done that, I've got to do some hinging. So where do I hinge on this one? Well, I'm going to hinge at the corner where I stopped. Okay, we always have to do that. And then I'm going to hinge at the corner under the arm. Okay. And then I'm going to hinge at the dart legs. Okay, so I put some H's there. This is a sad looking H. Okay. So, and I'll show you why we do that. Okay. So let me put this back up so you can see what I'm doing. Okay. All right, so let me get some paper here. Okay, I'm going to make this bigger. Okay. Okay. Okay, so I'm just going to put that here. Put that here. And this, I'm going to take this out half an inch. You guys should just do a quarter, all right? Because if you do more than that, you'll go crazy. So what I'm going to do is, when I add on here, I need to add right under the arm, okay? And I need to add where the darts are. Now, dart legs need to match, right? So when I sew those two dart legs together, they need to match. So now, okay, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring this up like that, and I'm going to bring this over to my ½ inch. Okay, so with that hinge, that works out pretty easy. Okay, and I'll just tape that. But then, and then I'm going to, but I have to now bring this in. So I have to match those. So when I bring both my dart legs in, I have to keep that at ½ inch and this at ½ inch. So to do that, I've got to be able to maneuver this. Okay? So I bring that out, and then I'm going to bring this. Now it's going to go, because I'm going out, it's going to come down a little bit from that mark, which is fine, because then I have this that I can adjust. So then I take it at the seam and match it right up here. Okay? Did that make sense? So I did a ½ inch out here, ½ inch out here. Now see it, because I'm going out, it adds a little bit of length. And so you can see that this dart's lower than that one, and then this corner is a little bit lower than the original corner where it was, which is fine, as long as I end up with that seam matching where this seam goes. Okay? So now we'll do the same to the back, but we'll do that. It'll come out a little different. But do you see how I made sure both dart legs are the same? Okay? So now, do I need to redraw? When I redraw, I've got to go to this original dart leg and go over like that. Now this one won't change much, okay? But you see how I've got to redraw that. And then, whoops, and then this, I'll just redraw it like that, okay? So that is finished. So now let me show you on the back what we're gonna do. Okay, we're gonna take it in on the back. Okay, when I take it in under the back, I'm not gonna go underneath the arm. Okay, I'm just gonna go straight down the back because I don't have all those curves to deal with. Okay, so on this one, I just hinge it here. And then I'm gonna go in, measure 1/2 inch, and go in. Okay, so I'll show you what I'm doing here. Okay, so on this one, I just went straight down. I didn't go under the arm, over and down, okay? Because I don't have as many curves. So on this one, I'm just gonna take this and, oh, I'm gonna go in. Or I could go out, but I'm gonna go in on this. Well, and your assignment is to go in. So there, that one's all finished. Okay, so I think we're done.